Let's talk about something I just learned about. This is another one where I'm gonna let my smart people in the room talk, because I learned about borderline personality disorder as I was getting ready to talk with you guys. I found out just how misunderstood it really is. I'm wondering about why it's so misunderstood, and I'm wondering also if it always involves self-harm, because some of the articles and stuff I found seem to tie it always to self-harm, others not. So I wanted to get at that a little bit, maybe primarily for you, Esther, and you, Patrick, the medical folks in the room. Talk about borderline personality disorder. What is it, and why is it so misunderstood? And is self-harm always a part of it?
I can take the lead on that. So my understanding of borderline personality disorder is through PA school. And you're right, there are a lot of stigma with this condition. It's one of the conditions that any clinician who encounter a patient with this condition will frown, because they have to kind of prepare themselves. How can I handle this patient, not only for their own safety, but also for my safety? Because the definition is that they have very unstable relationship, and the way that they interact with the world is also very unpredictable. One day, a patient with borderline personality disorder would have, like a very nice, pleasant demeanor, and the next day they would just screaming your heads off and, cursing you out because you are not giving them what they need in terms of medical treatment. I think a lot of people got confused between borderline personality disorder and multiple personality disorder, which is two separate conditions. One just means that they're having unstable relationship with themselves, with the world. The other means that they have multiple, almost personality in one person. So it's separate. And self-harm is definitely a key term, or like a hot term when it comes to borderline personality disorder. Just from, remember from taking my board exam, when there's self-harm involved, and when there's a woman involved, and, they give you a scenario, what kind of disorder that is. It's borderline personality disorder. It's automatically come to that. We don't know why exactly that is the case. I think, when you have unstable relationship, and this is just my theory, your interaction with the world is different, right? So we are perceived by the world by how we act, by how we, carry ourselves, and having the conversation and the way we talk to people. So for borderline personality disorder, the individual having that condition, they confuse people because they confuse people, and people don't know how to act around them or how to interact with them. And again, we go back to the self-stigmatizations of that process, where they internalize it, something is wrong with them, and then that vicious cycle continue to roll. It's like a snowballing effect where it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, there's only so much a person can take. So I'm not surprised that self-harm is part of that condition, but it's also what we have been trained and what's ingrained in my brain as a clinician, because I was trained that way. So there's also a lot of stigma in the medical literature about this condition.
Wow, that makes sense, because I'm not trained in that industry really, but I could see that bias in some of that literature I was reading. That's why I wanted to talk about it. Esther, do you have a perspective about that?
So obviously, I'm not trained in mental health. I can only speak on the health side of things, but in my background of just studying psychology, I feel like with borderline personality disorder, it can be a little bit hard to identify and actually diagnose somebody with it, because it can be mistaken for other disorders, right? Because you display such a variance of behaviors that you'll often get misdiagnosed with like anxiety disorder or substance abuse disorder, things like that, because they're just displaying so many different emotions, and you don't always get a consistency. So I almost feel like it will never just be a diagnosis of just borderline personality disorder, but it will have accompanying factors with it as well, or a dual diagnosis.
Before we wrap up, Jacob, I don't want to cut you out of that. Anything you want to add to that?
So I don't have too much to add about borderline personality disorder. I think maybe it might be useful to share a definition of what borderline personality is. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, borderline personality disorder is an illness marked by ongoing patterns of varying moods, self-image, and behavior. These symptoms often result in impulsive actions and problems in relationships, things that Patrick and Esther have already touched on. People with borderline personality disorder may experience intense episodes of anger, depression, and anxiety, and can last from a few hours to a few days. Again, something that Patrick has already touched on. So I actually had a friend who was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I, just in my brief interactions with that person, it can be overwhelming and difficult. And it's, unless you have the proper education and mental health support system for yourself to begin interacting with that person, it can seem impossible. So I know it's incredibly difficult to address friends, family, and loved ones who are experiencing borderline personality disorder. So that might add to some of the issues why it's hard to conceptualize and hard to approach.
Mm-hmm. As we get ready to wrap up, we could talk, it's getting into the wee hours of the night. We could talk for a while, but we're just about out of time. I'm going to ask the three of you, and Jacob, I'm going to wrap up with you. You're the newbie, so I'm going to put you on the spot to really close it out strong. But I'm going to ask each of the three of you what can we do to reduce stigma? And I don't want you to talk about multiple things. If you could, for someone watching this, if you could say one thing that they could do to help reduce or eliminate stigma with regard to mental health, what would it be? Patrick Ma.
I think this is to recognizing your what we call unconscious bias. We all have bias because that's how we perceive the world and process information. But I think, just understand that you may not understand, recognize that you may not understand mental health condition and mental illness, and recognize that you have that unconscious bias, and be willing to learn about these things and to help educate yourself and to help reduce the stigma and discrimination. I think that's the first step.
Excellent. Thank you. Esther Muriithi, what would you have to say? One thing.
I would say right along with that, with education, is staying open and not letting your default be, well, that's crazy. Let me turn around and not listen to that. I think it's very important that you stay open to the people around you and what they're trying to say to you. And if it's something you don't feel comfortable handling, don't just walk away, but try to find resources for them.
Two excellent tips so far. And so who better to give us a home run, the third knock out of the park? Jacob Vargas. One thing that somebody
I think a small but incredibly powerful thing that you can do to reduce mental health stigma is to talk openly and honestly with friends, family, people you really care about the issues that you're struggling with. You mentioned previously that you and I have had some really, really deep conversations, and as difficult as it was to hear the experiences that you went through, I found the whole experience to be a kind of a healing one. If not for you, for me, definitely, to hear you say those things. Not only that, but talking about those things, you were a role model of how vulnerability can be a strength and how you can reach out and get through things together, and that you don't have to be alone. So talking about it with those people that you care about it seems small, but it's incredibly important and really powerful.
I have thank you for saying that, Jacob. I have a colleague here at Brother Be Well, Justin Martinez, and he is smiling somewhere listening to you say, "I am a robot." Michael P. Coleman. That man is always talking about vulnerability as a superpower. So,
oh my gosh.
Justin, if you're out there anywhere, no, dude, I was on top of that vulnerability thing before you were born, young man. I got it. I want to thank you guys. It's always fun when we get together, even though these topics aren't always fun to talk about. I always learn something. I've got notes right here, and I've got some ideas from some additional broadcasts that we're going to do. So I want to thank everybody. Patrick Ma, advisor to Brother Be Well. Esther Muriithi, representative of Capital City Black Nurses Association, and new friend to Brother Be Well and old buddy of mine, Jacob Vargas. Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate your help today.
Thank you, Mike.
Glad I could be part of it.
Great to be a part of it. If you've heard anything that you've been intrigued by or want to hear a little bit more about, you can go to mentalhealthca.org. You can subscribe to the magazine right there, find out all kinds of tips, videos, print pieces, do the whole thing. Also, I mentioned Esther's organization, Capital City Black Nurses Association. They're at ccbna.org. So check them out as well. My name, as we get ready to wrap up, again, Michael P. Coleman, content director and lead writer for Brother Be Well. And I want to encourage you to do two things for me, if you would. Take good care of yourself, and then take good care of somebody else. Until next time, bye-bye.